As adventurers, we spend a lot of time looting dungeons and monsters for their treasure. However, some of the most prominent artifacts that you will find in a role-playing game are going to actually come from your table itself. Today, I'm going to be digging through a box of someone else's old game materials and see what treasures we can find. I hope you'll join me. Hello, I'm Joshua of Milestone Play, and today I wanted to do something a little bit unique. Now, a lot of the games that I run as a professional game master are online. They are digital games. And with that, most of the recording and all the stuff that we do with these games is digital, whether it's character sheets, whether it's note-taking, whether it's things in Discord servers around Roll20 or other virtual tabletops. A lot of what my players experience from me are digital products. However, a lot of us growing up playing Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games actually have a lot of physical things from the tables that we sit around. Now, all of those items that, for me, are kind of iconic of the history of D&D may not be experienced by newer players that are only playing online. So today I want to be going through a box of old stuff. Some people might call it junk, some people might call it treasure, but just a whole bunch of old things that are in a crate of D&D material from a relative of mine. Now, the first time I played Dungeons & Dragons was probably around second grade. I played with my brothers, I played with my father, and I played with my uncle. Over the course of the holiday season, I did go back home, I visited with people, and my uncle actually offered me his chest, his old box of a bunch of role-playing game stuff from when he was running games for his friends. And he was going to be getting rid of it. He was going to just eventually be throwing things out, and he figured he'd offer it to me. And I figured I would offer it to you to see some of the stuff that is in some of these just old gaming boxes, old books, old documents, old minis, just a whole bunch of fun treasures that, for me, I just love digging through. So we're going to be going through this. Some of it's going to be super relevant to Dungeons & Dragons specifically. Others is going to be a bit more tangential. I have gone through this box ahead of time to remove some names on some, like on a magazine, as well as to sort through a whole bunch of old rubbish that, as I'm sure you know, whenever you have a container, you put things in it. And not everything in the container is supposed to be in there, so we've already done that preliminary search. And yeah, so let's dig on in. The first thing that I've touched a couple times is actually a small chest. Now, this actually was not in the supplies that were given to me. However, really nice setting. I got it at the same time as a memory chest for my grandfather, so I figured I'd leave it in there. But let's move on to the first real item. So I guess the first major things to bring out are going to be 3 rule books. From Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So first one up, we've got the Monster Manual for AD&D. We've got the Monster Manual 2, and we've got the Fiend Folio. Now, the Fiend Folio is going to be pretty much the same thing as one of the Monster Manuals. However, I could have this wrong, please correct me if I do, but the Fiend Folio itself is actually a conglomeration, an anthology of a bunch of monsters that were not in initially official content. Now, I do have a history with these books. I did grow up occasionally having these in my house, borrowing them and or stealing them from my uncle. I don't exactly remember the order of events and how we got them for a while, but tons of fun. Never knew how to play this version of D&D. I've tried to learn it since, but it just doesn't sit in my head. I haven't had the opportunity to grind in and just figure it out and play it with people. So hopefully I eventually get that option, get that opportunity. But for now, this is more of a relic for me of the older days than anything that I have any firm attachments to. Next thing that we have, okay, I love this next thing. So there's going to be a bunch of loose papers throughout, but the first set of papers I have are just old pictures, old hand-drawn documents. There's a character sheet with a bunch of white outlines on it. But old maps, and like none of these things are great. Like, no offense to the people, actually this one is. The moment I say none of these things are great, we have a beauty like this vine sword, but just all of these different documents of really doodles and drawings, and whether it's eating up time at the table when it's not your turn, or describing things to other players so that they can see them. All of these things I find absolutely lovely. This is a monster that was made specifically to challenge a party that was using a bunch of homebrew rules that made their characters way powerful. And you have all of the stats and stuff, some of it stolen from monster manuals and things like that, other abilities just given out for free. And yeah, no, like, this is the stuff that you don't get playing online digitally. Like, yeah, you can make your own notes. You can deliberately spend time making illustrations to show players at the table and send them digitally. But just all the little doodles and things that happen during gameplay that, like, they get shoved in a box and you forget about them, and then eventually you come back and you find them and they are just like, oh, remember this time? And like, those are the things that, like, in my own boxes of role-playing game materials, that whether I draw them, whether a player doodles it, like, I don't like throwing those things away. Even if the owner doesn't care, if I can, I will get all those little doodles and save them, because they are memories of points in time, most likely when I was busy running the game for someone else, that I don't even know why the thing was drawn, and it's these little mysteries. I absolutely love them. Next thing, let's go ahead and pull out some of these. This is going to be a Dungeon Master screen. So this is 3rd edition Dungeon Master screen. And all of these characters that are on it are the stereotyped characters. They're the example characters in the player's handbook. So seeing these sorts of things, I actually have a bunch of I don't know if you can see them on that camera, but I have a bunch of 3.5 books in the background. And then 2 different adventures. These are pre-written adventures for 3rd edition. And these are the things that you buy thinking, oh, it's going to be really awesome when we do it. Like a level 18 adventure. Like, I want to do that. And then you might play them, you might not. In this case, my uncle specifically stated that they had not played many of these adventures that he had bought. And so it's these opportunities where I can look for information in them, but also it's just like, oh, these are things that other people wanted to do. This is what they thought would be interesting. Speaking of that, we will continue on to what other people find interesting. And the next book that I have out here is Sword and Sorcery Creature Collection, and this is a third-party book. This is a monster manual from a third-party source that, through the OGL, was able to publish these sorts of things. So, third-party book for monsters, and then we have a 3rd edition setting guide. This is going to be the Greyhawk Gazetteer, and that's going to be the core setting for 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons. All of the gods and stuff that you have in the player's handbook are going to be Greyhawk deities. So that is just a campaign setting. I don't know if there's any really adventures in there, but if I ever want to run Greyhawk, I do have that now. What do we have next? Okay, so we have a flyer for foam and upholstery. We have what's going to be a receipt from buying foam from this company. Some of the tape is on it just to make sure I don't open up any addresses or anything. And then we have a whole bunch of another monster manual, but this is not a TTRPG monster manual that we have in here. This is going to be a LARPing monster manual from the first LARP that I did, that my dad and my uncle and a couple other people put a lot of time and effort into making for us. And then it grew into this big thing that went beyond our family, and it was fantastic. A lot of people, like I'd say 100, 200 people have more memories of that LARP than I do. But yeah, just having this little monster manual from probably a defunct rule set that I don't know how many other people have that. It's probably lost on computers and hard drives somewhere. But yeah, so other role-playing game related things that spawned off of my dad's family playing Dungeons and Dragons growing up. Next up, we have a binder, and I could be wrong. I think this binder's full of, yeah, it's full of character sheets. So just dozens and dozens of character sheets, variable systems, third edition, second edition is going to be in here. And this is just from my uncle's table, from all the characters he made, all the characters his players made. And whenever I do a one-shot, whenever I do a game and I make pre-generated characters or something, I always offer for the players to take those characters home. They are their characters. However, if they're not going to take them home, that's another thing that I save in kind of a binder like this. That way, it just forms another way of having these memories of like, oh, remember when this character and this character. I love it. I absolutely love it. I know I'm rambling. This is going to be a very rambling video, but yeah, I love going through old boxes of role-playing game materials. Next thing we have up are going to be some more pre-made adventures that may or may not have been played. I don't know if new adventures do these, but like entire pages of just keys of what is on the map. That way you know what you're looking at on the tiny maps inside the books. Just, you know, general map of an area, and then a whole bunch of material. Some of it very much destroyed, but just a whole bunch of adventure that I don't know if they ran them or not. Some of that may be runnable, some of it may not. There is another page I should keep with the others. And then I think we're going on to a printer. Yeah, just a from your office printer, from your home printer, downloaded adventure. I don't know if this is official. I don't know if this is pirated. It's called Down by the Sea. If any of you know Down by the Sea, whether that's an official adventure or not. Next thing up is we have general keys. And we have a destroyed one that was actually in use. And then we have just the general. And growing up, playing D&D, getting into high school, there was a lot of just general tool sheets that we had. Yes, character sheets are tool sheets, but also diagrams for magic items, general keys, NPC info logs, and those sorts of things. Things that you just have a bunch of, and like, you never use them when you want to. I'll get back to that. This actually kind of gets into it of not using the proper materials, just having random pieces of paper where you put out monster information and an abandoned town scroll, reward missing people, one house locked, Kermit, and then information on getting in, I think. But yeah, so just all these old things. So sometimes you have those info logs and you have pre-made things that you're supposed to use for D&D. And then other times you work at a flooring, tiling, bathroom, kitchen place, and you just use their materials for producing content, their own gridded paper, meant for work, but instead you are using it for playing D&D. And the best thing about this is I know so many people who play D&D at work or have played D&D at work. And sometimes, yes, that means in the middle of the day, just playing in D&D in the middle of the workday. If someone comes in the door, you stop playing, you go deal with them. But more often than not, playing D&D after work at the facility. I know people who have worked in cigar lounges and pool halls that have just like after hours, they invite everyone over that plays and they just play in the back room. Or if they work in a hotel, using a meeting room or something like that, late in the night and just playing there. And it's surprisingly common. We have this idea that you play D&D at a game store or you play D&D around the dining room table or down in the basement. But personal, I guess this isn't personal experience. I've not actually done this, but a bunch of firsthand experience of like hearing people talk about, yeah, oh no, this is when I play, this is when I play, this is where I play. And yeah, so sometimes you just have all of those work materials that turn into gaming materials, and sometimes super apropos. And then we have a Game Informer magazine. So as you've seen, a lot of this stuff is AD&D and 3.0. I mentioned 3.5 for the stuff I've done, but everything in this box so far that has been 3rd edition has been 3.0. This is from when Elder Scrolls Oblivion was, I don't know, coming out big. A world-exclusive first look at the next generation of gaming. So it hasn't come out yet. And this came out in this particular issue was out in 2004. So a lot of this stuff is going to be like late 90s, early 2000s with some callbacks to some earlier stuff. So yeah, there is a gaming magazine. What else do we have in here? We have a lot more loose content. We have Magic the Gathering cards. Kind of, once again, another one of those tangential things, but makes sense. And then, okay, so I said the pictures and all that stuff was one of my, I think I like these more than the random baubles and doodles. And these are the scraps of paper where, oh no, quick, write this down. Or like the dungeon master gives the party a magic item and like needs to like remember, and they don't have their core stuff immediately at hand. So you end up having these little pieces of paper for like, oh, you got a tinder twig and a couple other things. Or just this like, you know, you pull it off of a pad and it's a reminder for next week that there's 4 guards left or something. Like part of looking into this stuff is not knowing what it means. Is this for next week that there's 4 guards left, or is this a reminder that you snuck by 4 guards, so when you have to sneak out, there's still going to be 4 of them? Just like all these little pieces of paper. Taloon, a ranger with just this tiny stat block. I have so many note cards with stat blocks going around. What appears to be like a party list for a new game. Another Whisper, an elf druid. Jasmine, a human wizard illusionist. If you don't know, as opposed to having subclasses for different types of wizards, in previous editions of the game, you could either be a straight wizard or a mage, or you could specialize into a school, and every school of wizard has its own class name, like the illusionist, the evoker, and things like that. And you would actually have deficits. You'd have prohibited types of magic and all that, depending on what type of character you were. Another piece of paper with a bunch of character info on it for Randy, and then some stuff on the back for his rations. This looks like it's a much younger person or someone with worse handwriting for Hercules. And then opposite that, a very nice handwriting for what appears to be, Kestrel, a human fighter. So yeah, just all of this stuff of like being able to spend time looking through it, and I love it. So we've gone through a bunch of the paper products. Now there are other things in here besides paper products. We have minis. Now these aren't going to be the set millimeter minis that you expect. These are going to be a representation of a centaur character. And this is not so much for putting on a battle map. Sometimes you can like just for relational stuff, but these are for, this is my character. This is what my character looks like. Next up we have a cleric, half-orc paladin, I think. And yeah, this is all falling apart, but that's what it is. And you know, using old Lord of the Rings figures, the centaur axes from Gimli, both because I know the image, but also I have Gimli, and I actually had some of these growing up. So there are non-mini minis, but then we actually have really old minis in here as well. We have a dragon, and these are going to be the old lead miniatures. These are not going to be like pewter. So depending on laws, I don't know if you can actually sell these to people since they're lead. That might just be a rumor that I heard. But yeah, so this is not really a fearsome dragon. One, it's missing its head, but also just the design of it being very small and flat and squished. It's a different aesthetic. Comes down to what they pictured, but also what they could economically make. And then opposite of that size, we have an itty bitty tiny, we've got this little werewolf. See if we can get that to focus. Got this little werewolf. Yeah, got the werewolf. And then we have some dice. Now, these are going to look familiar to many people. These are newer dice, kind of probably 2000s, mid 2000s. Got another set, but we actually also have an old die. And if you are a dice goblin, if you very much enjoy having dice, you probably have 1,000 different colors. You have 1,000 different combinations of what the core dice, and then if it's translucent and has sparkles or has ribbons of color, and then the numbers are a different color. Well, back in my day, dice came in a single color, and you liked it. But as opposed to a single color, all of them black, they did come in different variations, but the numbers weren't colored in. Helps if I actually show you what the dice looks like. The numbers weren't colored in, they were just carved in. And then you can see a tiny bit of discoloration. And the reason for that is you would actually take a crayon and you would grind a crayon into the hollows to color them yourself. Actually, I don't have a crayon, I do have chalk. I will be right back. So, chalk. Let's find the 20. Where is the? There it is. And then you would just grind your crayon, typically your wax, into this. And then after you did that, you would scrape off the outside, and that kind of worked. You'd scrape off the outside, and then the only crayon you'd have left would be inside the number, and that is how you would color your dice. So yeah, this is a really old die. What else do we have? We have 3 things left. So I have a couple books that I want to get to last, but we also just have an art box. So fitting along with the general hobby, we have an art box with old paints and trays and waxes, and then more paints and little nibs for fountain pens. I've used plenty of fountain pens making props for players and things like that. So yeah, it's just an old art box that kind of fits with the rest of the aesthetic of what's going on here, of the stuff that you're going to use for gaming. And I think I'm going to get this cleaned up, and I'm going to use this for some project later on. So, last 2 things we have. This is going to be a reference book. This is actually, doesn't have anything on the outside that's easy to read. You might be able to see the Book of Runes. And once again, just another thing for producing games, for research and all that fun stuff. And I've got a couple books on my back bookshelf for animals, for Tolkien's languages, for folklore and all those sorts of things that they're kind of my inspirations for when I'm writing games. But yeah, having a book of old runes can be a lot of fun. And then the last book I have, I don't know how much I'm going to use this. This is volume 4 of probably, I think, 5. And this is wizard spells. So there was a very long period after Advanced Dungeons & Dragons came out that it was only the only game they had, because it's very early on in the history of D&D. And with that, they could just continue to produce more and more and more articles and magazines and books and just all this stuff. And eventually you would be like searching through all of these different sources for abilities, for spells and things like that. So they started producing like volumes, compendiums of all this stuff. And there were so many wizard spells that they actually had to make 5 or 6 volumes. So this specifically, it says in the front, this volume has the spells Squaring the Circle to Zone of Despair. And there are so many weird old spells and very specific spells, but that also comes down to the way the game was played and the mechanics of how playing a wizard worked in previous editions versus current editions. But on that topic of previous versus new, the way a game is designed also affects how they expect you to play it. And the way they expect you to play it affects the design, the inverse of that idea. And so I was actually flipping through here, saw some stuff, and they're very poignant ideas. So the first one is taking the idea of what the game expects the dungeon master to tell the players. And I was actually, I'll link it up here. My previous Game Master Diary, I reference beginning to think about what information players expect to be given. And one of the things that caused me to think about that among how I'm running my games in a couple of different groups was this book. And specifically, my eye got caught on the Chronomancy page. And the Chronomancy page caught my eye because I do have a Chronomancer in one of my games. More recently, in 5th edition, Critical Role has produced the idea of having the Chronomancer Chronomancy subclass for wizards in 5th edition. However, if you look hard enough, pretty much every idea that you come up with for now probably has been done in some version in the past. And so that's clearly in this book. But what caught my attention was the beginning paragraph that says, due to the complex and self-correcting nature of the time stream, the following detail should be withheld from a player who has a Chronomancer until they occur in play. So there are specific rules that they are telling you as the game master that these rules are not necessarily in the core spell. They might be, but that's actually something to look into. I don't know if in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons you saw the spells, or the Dungeon Master gave you the information. I know in games like Call of Cthulhu, you're not supposed to necessarily tell the players what exact spells they get and how they're different from the book. It's supposed to be a mystery. So I don't know if in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons you actually look at the spells. However, I think this is in a Game Master specific section for those rules. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea that for all these different spells, that there are things that the player does not know about, that they're given their version of the spell, and the game is waiting for certain things to come up, and it's supposed to be a surprise, it's supposed to be a challenge, it's supposed to be a random curveball where the spell may stop acting how you expect it to. And that is part of the design of earlier versions of the game, where the actual rules themselves tell you that you're not going to know everything as the player. Additionally, the other thing, just opposite of this page, is information on Lichdom and becoming a Lich. And I found this really interesting, one, because typically you think of this as an NPC thing. But if you have done any research into the Satanic Panic, into when Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games were seen as this evil thing, one of the things cited in that is the fact that the game gave players rules for evil rituals. And while most of the time that could be misconstrued as the rule books themselves giving them ideas, in this specific case, there are actually rules on rituals on how to become a Lich. And I'll give you guys probably a picture of that as I go through it. But part of becoming a Lich is you have to drink a potion, and it gives you the actual recipe that your character has to go through. The potion has to have 2 drops of the purest distillate arsenic. A lot of these things are going to say the purest distillate. So 2 drops of arsenic, 2 drops belladonna, 1 quart of blood from a Pegasus foal killed by wyvern venom. That's very specific. Blood from a vampire. Heart has to be an intact heart of a humanoid killed by a poisonous mixture of arsenic and belladonna. So not only are you giving that to yourself, but you have to have the heart of someone killed by that stuff. Belladonna, if you don't know, is what's used to cure lycanthropy, but it's also very toxic, and most of the time it will kill your character if you're not strong enough or you don't have the proper precautions set up. Anyways, you need the reproductive glands from 7 giant moths dead for less than 10 days, ground together. Venom, 1 pint drawn from a phase spider less than 30 days prior. And venom, 1 pint drawn from a wyvern 60 days prior. So you have all these things, like you have actual instructions on how to do things. And I don't know if this was produced before or after the Satanic Panic, but the fact that it's not just rule books that are like, oh, we're giving people bad ideas. They're giving you actually lists of things. However, they're lists of things that either don't exist, like face spiders, vampires, you cannot get these ingredients. And if they do exist, like arsenic, it is hopefully, I guess I shouldn't make assumptions, but hopefully you should know not to consume large quantities of arsenic. Yes, you can have some in very minor qualities throughout the environment, but maybe don't do that. But yeah, so that is the last thing in this box, but those 2 big talking points I wanted to save for last, just because these are the things I think of when I go through old gaming supplies, when I go through people's old adventures and notebooks and just see the things that they've made for games. And I absolutely love it. And I don't know how many current players, how many new players actually have things like this. Not because you have to have you don't have to play old editions for things like this, but with the amount of online digital resources and all that, I don't know how many of these things actually get gathered together. And they don't have to be awesome. They don't have to be $60 minis and $500 of terrain. It's just the things that you happen to collect and make and use during your career of playing a role-playing game or many role-playing games. And I love it. I absolutely cherish it. I am so thankful that I have these as opposed to them eventually being thrown out. And yeah, thank you guys for joining me for going through all this stuff. I hope you at least saw something of interest to you. And if you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe. If you very much like this stuff, hello. Let's see if I can get this in. You can join my Patreon. These are some of my patrons that have made my work available for general consumption, and I very much appreciate them. Let's go ahead and just, sure. Let's close this out with the double cam, roll with advantage, go.